The World Series is over, and it might have been one of the best series of all times. It was also in had very controversial calls in it that honestly might have made it the most rigged series since the 2003 NLCS for baseball. Just because of all the terrible calls in games 3, 6, and 7. Um, but it was one of the best series of all time, even though it ended in a way that nobody wanted it to, and also again the very close controversial calls. Um, I finally got my audio to work. Unfortunately, it's November 2nd, so I don't have much time to get these videos out because I basically had to waste the whole day. But it is nice to be back in New York and recording, and I will get as much content out as possible. Um, First of all, your World Series MVP was Yoshinobu Yamamoto. So they put Shohei as the NLCS MVP, which is probably undeserved. Thankfully, he did not earn World Series MVP. It was actually a pitcher. Who wound up earning World Series MVP. Yamamoto went 3-0 in this World Series. He pitched in relief of Game 7. He also started Game 6 as well as Game 2. And 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 looking at Yamamoto's pitching stats, looking at Yamamoto's pitching stats, again 3-0 in the World Series. He pitched 17 and two-third innings, allowed 2 earned runs, so an ERA of around 1 in the World Series, which is really incredible, actually. Um, um, is my thing working? Okay, I think I'm back. So, but yeah, for the 2025 World Series, so I'll just go through it. Game 1, you start off with the Blue Jays just absolutely smashing down the Dodgers' throat in a sixth inning, and demolishing Blake Snell. They won it 11-4, even though they were down 2-0 after 3 innings. Um, and they just absolutely dominated Game 1. Game 2, the Dodgers dominated. It was tied for a while, but eventually the Dodgers began to pull away and won it 5-1 as Yamamoto pitched a complete game shutout. Um, Game 3 was 6-5. The second inning was full of controversy as what was clearly ball 4. And I might show you this later after I break through the game. What was clearly ball 4 was instead called a strike 3, and it resulted in a runner getting picked off as well. So there's a lot of controversy there because it probably should have been ball 4, and maybe the game never gets to extras if it is called correctly. The Dodgers take a 2-0 lead. The Blue Jays then take a 4-2 lead. Then it's tied up at 4. They both score in the 7th inning. Ohtani reached base 9 times in this game, 4 of which via the intentional walk. He also had 4 extra base hits. It scores from the 8th to the 17th innings, but in the 18th inning, Freddie Freeman hits a home run to give the Dodgers the lead. In Game 4, the Blue Jays take a 6-2 lead. Even though they were trailing early on, Ohtani goes 6 innings but allows 4 runs. Game 5, the Blue Jays also win it. They win it 6-1. In Game 6, the Dodgers win 3-1. Yamamoto only goes 6 innings. It was actually a strategic move for them. But it was 3-1 early on, and the Blue Jays could never recover. Another source of controversy was when a ball got lodged under the wall. It probably should have been a triple to put the tying run on third with no one out. Instead, it was ruled a ground rule double. Um, this wasn't as bad as the other one because if you look at Stadium Dimensions, you probably could make the argument of a ground rule double. But I will say Cespedes on the Mets made a very similar play that wound up being an inside the park home run when he wouldn't touch it. So you could definitely, so there probably was some bias there. Game 7 might have been one of the most heartbreaking losses, and of course there was a controversial play at the plate. But when you look at it, he probably was out. Honestly, I think the biggest controversy comes down to Game 3 in this one. But the Blue Jays took a 3-0 lead early and had a 4-2 lead after 7 innings. They were 2 outs away when there was a game-tying home run by Miguel Rojas, and the Blue Jays could not score before eventually losing the game. And if we just look at that game, the Blue Jays, they had 91.7% odds to win when they were only 2 outs away. They also had 91.1% odds to win when they were 5 outs away and only had, 2, and were up by 2 runs. They were really the favorites for the whole game, but they just could not seal the deal in it. Will Smith hit the home run in the 11th to give it, and you have to really think that that the Dodgers just had more pitching than the Blue Jays did when it came down to it. But also, I'm surprised at how the Blue Jays offense just completely disappeared. You'd think it would fight back more, and it just couldn't. But, to be fair, the Dodgers also had a chance to win it in the 10th when they had the go-ahead run on third in 1 out. They couldn't get it in. And you had Vlad hit the double to left early on. You had the sacrifice bunt, but then Borgia walked, and Cook wound up grounding into a double play. You have to wonder, was bunting the right move there? But with how bad IKF is, it probably was. You just had to put IKF in there because Bichette couldn't even score with 2 outs on a single into right field. From second, Bichette couldn't score. And it was on 2 outs when you go on contact. So you had to pinch run for him there, but that means you take away his bat. Even though this was shades of what happened in Game 3. It's just shades of what happened in Game 3. By the way, speaking of Game 3, I wonder if the win probability meter is finally updated because it wasn't even showing the whole game. There we go. Yeah, just to show you how crazy Game 3 was. But you had all these pinch runner nonsense in the Blue Jays. They basically took out half their lineup of pinch runners, which really doesn't make sense in the context of you're not even at home, you're on the road. So you didn't have any offense left in them, and you had all their good bats taken out of the equation. So that's what happened in Game 3. And by the way, as for the controversial call in Game 3, wait, was this a walk? I don't know. I know he's picked off. ESPN is saying that it's a strike, which I'm a bit surprised by. But ESPN strikes are generally too big. I don't know. I'm really confused by this whole thing. Opportunity Game 6 controversy. And here's the thing before it compares to other Game 7s. You have to think about this, too. With how much the MLB glazes Ohtani and glazes the Dodgers, you have to wonder, would they actually do something like rig the series? Honestly, they might have. This is so controversial. It takes away from a great game when you have all this controversy around it. But we can go back to other Game 7s. Um, in the MLB Game 7s, and we're not, we're not focusing on the ALCS, NLCS. We're just gonna focus on World Series Game 7s. This has to be up there as one of the best. In 2019, I get that Game 7 was more competitive than it looked, but even though the Astros took a 2-0 lead after 6, the Nationals stormed back and won it 6-2. But it wasn't even that close by the time you got to the end of it. 2017, the real game of our time that gets remembered is Game 5 with all the comebacks and the fact that it went to extra innings and the fact that it went 13-12. But by Game 7, it was 5-1 in favor of the Astros, and it was like that early on. When you think of Game 7, you think 2016 Game 7, where you had both teams having very long droughts. It was the Cubs had a 6-3 lead after 7, but wound up being 6-6 in the 8th. The Cubs win an 8-7 in the 10th. That's what you think when you think Game 7. (2001), another great Game 7, where the Yankees had a 2-1 lead after 8, and then the Diamondbacks get to Rivera and walk it off 3-2. 97, another Game 7 that gets remembered for all time. Seeing as in Game 7, the Marlins were down 2-1 into the 9th, tied it up, and then won the game in the 11th. There were truly plenty of great Game 7s in MLB baseball history. This will live on as one of them. Honestly, this might have been the best postseason in baseball in general in a while. I'm being serious too. Because you look at it, you look at the wild card series. In the wild card series, only Reds Dodgers wound up being a sweep. You had Cubs Padres, which wound up being competitive in that series. Red Sox Yankees. The Red Sox kind of went out with a whimper. Tigers Guardians also. But at least those were competitive games. In Padres Cubs Game 3, you had a tying run on second base at one point. In the ALDS, Blue Jays Yankees was a bit of a disappointment. Even though Game 3 did feature the Yankees' big comeback from 6-1. But in Mariners Tigers, you had a 15-inning game in Game 5, which was a deciding game. Brewers Cubs also went 5, and Phillies Dodgers only went 4, but it wound up going 11 innings in a deciding game. In the ALCS, obviously Brewers Dodgers was a huge disappointment as the Brewers just did not show up to the series and got swept. But in the ALCS, you wound up having a 7-game series there with another Game 7 comeback, seeing as the Mariners were up 3-1 after 6 in the middle of the 7th, and then wound up going down 4-3 and losing. And I had to wonder, Mariners fans must be really pissed off because no one wanted the Dodgers to win. And the Mariners probably could have taken on the Dodgers, if I'm being honest. They probably could have. But bad managerial decisions and bad umpiring and just bad everything is what gave the Dodgers the series.